Return now to politics. Joining me, former and long-time Labor strategist, is with Fitzpatrick and Co advisory Bruce Hawker, and former New South Wales Liberal leader Kerry Chikarovski. It's great to see you both. I'll go to Kerry first of all on this one. Susan Lee, very critical of the Prime Minister for attending that UK Labor conference in Liverpool. The PM says he was there to argue the case for democracy and to foster relations not just with Starmer but other ministers, talking AUKUS and so on. What's your read on that element of what's been a long trip overseas, Kerry?
It certainly has been a long trip and there's still a couple more days to go. So I'm sure that the Prime Minister will be somewhat jet-lagged by the time he gets home. So I hope he's ready for the grand final on the weekend and recovered for that. Listen, I had a look at the parliamentary entitlements, and you are entitled as a Member of Parliament to attend national and state conferences. So I'm wondering whether it kind of fits into that category, that whilst this is an international conference, it's still basically a party political conference, which one would assume, is very much in the Prime Minister's bailiwick in terms of his politics. So, look, I'm probably a little less critical of it. I do hope that we do see how many other ministers he met with while he was there. I'm sure he's actually walked out of that conference feeling pretty good about himself because the reception was pretty overwhelming. I think the person who probably benefited most from it was, in fact, Sir Keir Starmer. He's sort of struggling a bit at the moment. I think he's probably hoping that some of the rock star type welcome that our Prime Minister received may rub off on him. I'm not entirely sure that that's going to happen, though.
Bruce, what's your assessment as a long-time watcher and player in politics, of course? What would be your advice to the Prime Minister on this one?
Look, I think he's had a pretty full itinerary during this trip. He had that United Nations sojourn. He secured a meeting with the President for October, which was something everyone's been calling for. In the UK, he met with Starmer, he met with the opposition leader. There were bilateral meetings with the Prime Minister of Canada, Carney, the Finnish Prime Minister, and I think a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Spain. So when you add all that in, you can say, well, that's a pretty full itinerary that he's met in those 11 days. The fact that he attended the Labor Party conference, I don't see anything particularly significant about that in terms of whether that's a conflict of interest or whether he shouldn't have been doing it. I mean, he was in the neighbourhood after all. He might as well have taken the opportunity to go and see what a fraternal party of the Labor Party was saying and doing, and that's an important thing, and to lend his support to a fellow Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, with a message, I think, that was important, and that is that really to achieve lasting change, you have to stay the distance and you have to be prepared to make those real changes to the lives of people that are important for the Labor tradition, housing, health, education and the like. So I think that was a good match for him in the UK. It'll be appreciated by Labor Party people in Australia and the United Kingdom, and for most others, it'll not be a thing of any great consequence. That's how I would see it.
Okay, and Kerry, as we turn our attention now, and like you said, I think you're right, the PM will be jet-lagged, but hasn't got time really to sort of settle down too much. There's a lot happening over the next couple of months, and, before he heads to the ASEAN and APEC summits in late October, he's got that October 20 meeting at the White House. And that really is where a lot of our attention turns to. We've got Parliament back next week, but, at a national level, there's a lot at stake in that much anticipated meeting with Mr. Trump.
Oh, absolutely. And the problem for the Prime Minister will be that there will be a huge level of expectation that he's going to be able to pull out of that meeting some really significant advantages for Australia. And that will, for example, be looking at things like tariffs, whether we can get any further concessions on tariffs. It will be a further commitment, a strong and clear commitment from the President to AUKUS, which, he's still been looking at his reviews and he's dilly-dallying around about it, all of that. So people will be expecting hoping that there will be a statement from the President that we are committed, he is committed, that the US is committed to AUKUS. And I think also that he is comfortable with our positions in relation to China. I mean, the reality is our position in relation to China is something which is of great concern, I think, in our national interest. And, the President seems to dilly-dally around what he thinks of China. So that, I think, will be another interesting conversation they have. And finally, of course, our position on Israel and Palestine will be interesting to see what, if anything, the President has to add to his comments about the fact that he thinks that we've done the wrong thing in recognising Palestine. I'm hoping that they're going to have a White House meeting, in the Oval Office, because they always seem to be very good TV, Kieran, and I'm sure you and all your colleagues will be looking forward to an opportunity to question him in that setting.
We would love a bit of that for the good TV, as you say, Kerry. It makes for great TV. Bruce, I remember back in the day when Kevin Rudd arrived and George W. Bush, who was obviously, as you know, famously close to Mr. Rudd's predecessor, Mr. Howard, but then they were more normal times, and Bush, was willing to embrace Kevin Rudd. How much of a risk is there, a question mark, heading into that Oval Office meeting with Prime Minister Albanese? Well,
you've got to be very careful about making predictions about Donald Trump. It can depend on his mood, on what someone's whispered in his ear. And we've seen that play out in remarkable ways in the past. His confrontation with President Zelensky, particularly. He made life very difficult for Zelensky. He also coincidentally made life difficult for Peter Dutton when that happened, because that was about the time that the Australian public started getting very careful about their endorsement of people that might be a bit like Trump. So I think it will be a well-prepared meeting, though. Ambassador Rudd will be laying the groundwork, as will the Foreign Minister and others. Don Farrell, particularly. So hopefully there won't be too many surprises. I think Kerry's laid out the major issues that would be addressed at that meeting. I think making sure that everything's fine with AUKUS is very important to the government, as it should be to the United States as well. Tariffs, I wouldn't hold out great hopes about tariffs. I don't think they have really demonstrated much enthusiasm to depart too much from the initial arrangements that they made around tariffs for the major trading partners. I think they flipped and flopped around China and so forth, but even the UK hasn't really got down any special deals. It still sits at 10%, which is very high, both for the United States and for Australian exporters. Pharmaceuticals, I think that's going to be a big issue, and I'd like to see some movement there by the Australian government. But I wouldn't hold out huge expectations around tariff. I think around security, yes, I think we'll have a good discussion. They'll agree to disagree about Gaza, as Trump and Starmer did, and hopefully it will then move on to a stable as you can hope for anyway, relationship with the United States in a very, very turbulent time. In terms of their foreign policy. The operative word is hopefully. Yep. Thank you, Bruce, Kerry. Look forward to seeing you both next week.